Okay, so hi everyone, welcome to our 2021 Student Union X Caucus Town Hall. This is the second town hall that we're holding, and last year our Student Union one went really well, so I'm hoping that this one goes well as well. So if you don't already know, my name is Ava Yap. I'm one of the BOE co-chairs, and we also have here Raymond Yan, who is my other co-chair. So although our Student Union and Senior Caucus and Junior Caucus elections were uncontested, we do have these 6 amazing people who will be our student government representatives this upcoming year. And we're really excited to see what they have to offer for us going back into this strange times while we're going back into school finally. We're hoping that this is going to be a really informative town hall where we get to learn a lot about what they have planned for this upcoming year. We have a bunch of great questions lined up, which will be asked by our 2 moderators for today, Melody and Nikki. And if you guys have any questions that you that aren't asked throughout this town hall that you would still like to be asked or wondering about next year, you can totally feel free to private message either me, Raymond, Melody, or Nikki with these questions, and we'll hold them off to the side. And we'll try and get to those at the end if we have any time remaining. Yeah, so I'm going to pass it over to Nikki and Melody, and they're going to get started with the questions.
Okay, so for any students who may not know you already, please introduce yourself and let us know what your experience in student government is.
I can start. Hi everyone, I'm Shivali. Next year I'll be the Student Union President, and I began in the Student Union as a delegate of External Affairs, and this year I was Student Union Vice President. And thank you all for coming. I'm really excited to speak with you guys.
Hi, my name is Ryan Lee, and once again, thank you all for coming. And so I started my journey into Student Union in my sophomore year, which is right now, as the Sophomore Caucus Co-President, and in the fall, I'll be the serving Student Union Vice President.
Hey everyone, my name is Cynthia, and I'll be the co-president of Senior Caucus next year, and I have been the president of the caucuses since freshman year.
Hi, my name is Elio. I'll also be the co-president of the Senior Caucus next year, and I've had a bunch of different positions in caucus, but I've been in student government for this will be my 4th year.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniel, and that guy right there with the red hair is named Andrey Sokolov, and we're both going to be your Junior Caucus co-presidents for the next year. And yeah,
so Daniel has been the Sophomore Caucus president, and I was a chief of staff under him, and now we are the Junior Caucus.
And we're extremely excited for next year.
Okay, cool. Although you all ran uncontested, what is the #1 thing that you want students to know about your platform?
Yeah, I think one thing that I can say on behalf of all of us is that as a student union and caucuses, we don't really want next year to just be a continuation of what the SU has always been. Students' changes are always adapting and their needs are always having different priorities. And so we hope to adapt alongside students. Things that we advocate for, the initiatives we push will all be based around what students need and want in that time period. So over the past year and next year, things as small as like the way clubs are functioning, the way events are being hosted, those will continue to adapt based on what students need, and we'll continue to reach out for feedback. But some stuff bigger, like the reopening plan, is definitely going to affect every single student next year. And because of that, we as a student union don't want to just put our opinions involved in the decision-making process. We want to make sure that every student's opinion is incorporated and heard. And so part of that comes with student involvement and making sure that we have a way and a channel of hearing directly from students. We know students are busy, and oftentimes we can see a lot of student apathy within student government or just like reopening plans, surveys. And part of that is our responsibility as a union to make sure that we are having really simple and easy communication channels to hear back from students, whether that be feedback forms, Q&As, conversations with students and the administration. and also the SLT, which is a really big platform for students to talk directly with administrators, teachers, counselors, and everyone in one space. And we often notice that students don't really get a place because they aren't necessarily aware that this is the channel that exists to make their opinions heard. And so those are just a few ways that we're going to make sure we can involve students in a really simple way where they aren't being inconvenienced and having to take too much time out of their day just to make sure that their priorities are made clear to the SU. So yeah, this next year is not going to be continuation. We're going to adapt and make sure that we are hearing and reaching out from students directly. Yeah.
I guess I can cut in. So for the senior caucus, at least what we want to see is two different things. So first, we want to see senior year normalcy, which is definitely supported by the big announcement that just happened today. I'm not sure if you guys saw, but Mayor de Blasio announced and the chancellor of the schools announced that we'll be going back to school in person fully with no remote option. So I think that's a great opportunity to return to the normalcy that we all used to know in senior year, at least the class of 2022. And then also another thing we want to focus on is college preparation. Like Shivali said, the student union at large and the SLT will continue to focus on a lot of the school-specific policies and back-to-school policies. But as senior caucus, we have a lot of visions for what we want to see in terms of normal events that seniors have, and also on balancing the college process with a lot of other school and extracurriculars. And I think Cynthia will go into what exactly we mean by those things.
Yeah, so elaborating on what Elio just said, the first thing that is a very big priority is senior year normalcy. So that comes in the form of having an in-person prom, a graduation, seeing as many adjustments were made to fit the circumstances of COVID this year. We'll have to see that we can try to follow DOE restrictions, but also bring back a lot of these events that mark senior year at Stuyvesant, including senior sunrise as well, movie nights, all of these things that will bring back that sense of school spirit in the community. These are really critical for us. And in addition to that, continuing on college preparedness. So this year we've had a lot of resources provided by Elio and I and the Junior Caucus. So this includes the how-to newsletters, which have come very often, almost monthly. And we have like things talking about Navions and how we can ask for teacher recommendations, standardized tests. All of that goes into the fall of senior year. As we apply for colleges, it's really important that students have are backed by Senior Caucus. And yeah, those are our two priorities this year.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so for Junior Caucus for the next year, I think we've all heard about how junior year is quite possibly the hardest year, especially at STY, God forbid. And so really our main priority for the next year is to be able to alleviate as much stress from the juniors as possible and to just really be able to support them through one of the hardest years of their lives. And so we really want to do this in a few key ways. I think number one is we want to hold really good and fun events. We have a couple of plans like a picnic and movie nights and things like that we can hopefully hold once we go back to school. And we hope that these will be able to rekindle the connections that we might have lost over the pandemic, and also just, create some sort of school spirit and, grade spirit as well. And we also need to make sure that all of the juniors next year are going to be prepared for college and are understanding of what the process is like as much as possible. And so we actually have a few initiatives that we really want to put into place. I think some of them, the Junior Caucus from this year has already done like mock SATs, which we hope to continue. And we also want to do things like have a So You Want To series of newsletters. And that can include things like resume writing, applying for internships and things like that, and just guiding juniors through and supporting them through these things. And we also think that it's incredibly important that we're able to just improve the day-to-day lives of the juniors. And that can be in so many different ways. But I think the most important thing is we want to make sure that juniors are heard and have an outlet to voice their concerns. And specifically that's through us, so that we can actually make manageable change. And yeah, Andrey, if you have anything else to add.
I would say that, just like Daniel said, we want to make sure that the newsletters are being made, and we want to ensure they're of utmost quality, which is going to be an extremely important part of our year in office.
Okay, great. So you all have a lot of priorities and plans for the upcoming year. What is the number one thing you hope to accomplish?
Um, I guess I'll first. Well, one of the main two things that we want to accomplish during the next year is one, transitioning up underclassmen into STI, and then also changing academic culture plus mental health. So in the next year, I'm sure you all know there are going to be two grades where they haven't even stepped into the building, and with all the grades not being within the school in a normal year for almost over a year and a half, there are a lot of changes to be made to adjust for just going back to in person alone. And that can range from the SU advocating for a bunch of different changes, such as a transition period, or just and and so I think my audio cut out. So, and then with changing academic culture and mental health, we want to create. It's been a long-lasting thing within STI, and it's something that we want to change. Where we want to make a STI a place where people can grow academically and emotionally. Where with current initiatives that we have now, with surveys, with the caucuses and SLT, and advocating for different policies, that's something that we want to continue, and we want to continue to advocate and change things to make STI a place for people to learn and grow as people.
And I suppose that the junior caucus will try to, our number one thing is bring back the Junie spirit, because over the last year there has been a lot of miscommunication and a lot of unengagement by the student body, sadly, due to the fact that we were in the middle of a global pandemic. And we think that we kind of have to come back and restore the various, well, older forms of communication between the student body and ourselves. So word of mouth, actually talking to people in person. That is the one thing we want to ensure for the usage of our policies, such as using newsletters or communicating to people using new methods of social media.
Yeah, and we really want to strengthen the connection that the juniors have with their caucus, because it's just so important that once we go back, a lot of things are going to be changing and a lot of things aren't going to be easy to get used to again. And we want to make sure that all juniors are supported through that time. And also, very sorry for cutting off the senior caucus. You guys can go now.
You're okay. So I will talk about senior caucus and our goals. As mentioned before, our plan is to continue a sense of normalcy after COVID and as we reopen schools. So starting off with a timeline of the college preparedness that we want to have in this spring. In the late spring/summer, we plan to hold an event with the seniors to talk about any questions or any advice that they may have. So this will be in collaboration with the current senior caucus, Katerina and Ayala. Then we'll hold an event with professional college advisors, which Elio and I have already been in contact with, to talk to juniors about coming up with essay ideas for the Common App, which is going to be in the fall. So we know that we need to get a head start on a lot of things that are going to be happening. And the sooner we do it, the better it'll be for juniors. Then we'll compile resources to be used in the summer for supplemental essays and structure. We'll expand on our How to College series, which has been ongoing. It's been very successful. And we'll make an edition on different colleges, portals, and when to access them. Then we'll compile a calendar of all different college events and virtual tours. The last thing that we compiled was of all the open houses or the virtual sessions that the college hosts. And that was very successful as well. A lot of people accessed it. And then going into the fall, we're planning on partnering with the Writing Center. Once we're all in person, a lot of people flood into the Writing Center to get help on college essays. So we'll ask them for college essay specific help. And that can be in the form of workshops so that more people can access it. Again, we'll connect with college advisors and organizations to get direct essay help. And then we'll follow up with recommendation help to make sure that everyone is prepared to have their teacher recommendations. We'll create a bulletin on our website with all of the deadlines for different applications and schools. And we'll promote scholarships to make them more accessible. And lastly, we'll advocate for school planned college tours. Again, the sense of normalcy and being allowed to go into colleges in person, because we feel it's really important that people can see what the campus is like, what the culture is like. And I'll pass it on to Elio to talk about senior activities.
Yeah, so Cynthia just talked all about our plans for college and helping juniors, or now seniors, with college. But one of the things that we both agree we really want to achieve is restoring a sense of school spirit. And that's been super difficult this year because we've been online, and it's hard to tap into the students who don't necessarily interact with our emails as much as we would hope, and it's hard to get people to those events. So that is why, like we mentioned earlier, we're hoping to hold homecoming in the fall. And the homecoming in the fall is not something that's typically done, but it would be an in-person event because we listened to the advice of parents and our guidance counselors who told us that students really want an opportunity to see each other in person, in a social setting. And then we'll also continue to plan prom and graduation and make them the best they can be, surveying students for their preferences of locations. And as Dia mentioned last time in the last question, we want to have fun events like senior sunrise, where we cater food in the morning, the first day of second semester, for all the seniors to come to school and enjoy the last sunrise we have the last semester. And senior movie night, senior spirit week, make that a more organized thing. But we also have our own twists to things that haven't been done before, like a photo booth for a commitment day. I'm working with other clubs and organizations to make a photo booth, a nostalgia night where we put out a movie, like Nickelodeon movies, in the senior atrium, and we have like kindergarten snacks and those little rugs from kindergarten that we all used to sit on, the styrofoam ones. We also want to make cube filling a more official event. We all get a cube, so the class of 2022 will get a cube. It's those little glass cubes that can be found all around the school, and we really want to have our own and make that like a nice reveal event. And on another note, we're also super adaptive people. So Cynthia and I love building on our platform in new ways. So we definitely hope to expand on our platform throughout the year and adjust to student input beyond what we currently have planned. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, that all sounds great. What are some ways that y'all plan on helping students transition back to an in-person environment? And adding on to that, a lot of students seem to be wondering if the in-person school will return exactly as it previously was, like 10 period days, 8 a.m. start time, and 42-minute classes, etc. Do you think that the return to school should be exactly as it was before, or do you have plans to work with administrators to alter the school schedule to make this transition back easier?
Yeah, so I want to start by saying that we're very lucky this year to have a principal and administration that has put a priority on incorporating student voice and input into the reopening decision-making process. I've already been in pretty frequent communication with Principal Yu, and he's made it clear to us that both the SU and the Caucuses will have a large role in the reopening decision process over the summer and throughout the year. So just starting with that, we are all going to be very involved with that. And to answer your first question about specifics, things like the schedule, when we start, how many periods a day we'll have, the SU is not going to make the decision just within the 6 of us and our 6 opinions. In order to decide what we want to advocate for, we need to hear back from the students first and hear what worked for them best, what they felt helped them with their mental health, their academic support, and all these different factors. Since we have not had a full survey with sufficient student responses yet, we're planning on releasing that before the school year ends. So over the summer, we have a basis as to what we will be fighting for with the reopening decisions. And for the last part about like going back to normal, I guess, to answer that, I feel like it's yes and no. In one part, I think a lot of us do really want to go back to school, see our friends, be able to walk between classes, say hi to people in the hallways. Like all of these things are what makes STI, and they're very important. And so in one sense, we are going to be advocating to go back to what STI used to be. Part of what the SU does is run clubs through STI activities. We run over 180 clubs this year, which is a lot and more than it's ever been. And I think that's just a testament to how involved students were this year. They really wanted connection with their friends and their peers. And so we definitely don't want that to change. We want to have a way for students to meet in person with their club leaders, club members, because as great as it has been to see everyone virtually over this pandemic, like we definitely lose a sense of connection when we're talking and discussing through Zoom. And so a big part of what we're going to do is making sure that we get some of those old senses of normalcy, like the seniors were talking about, through sing clubs. I mean, as upperclassmen, it's kind of crazy to think that a lot of the parts that have made STI in our experiences, like the underclassmen have never really experienced that. And that's going to be really difficult. We have a really big conversation about mental health this year and next year. And part of addressing mental health is making sure that students are coming into STI and leaving STI, growing as like a person, both academically, but also mentally, like Ryan was talking about earlier. So yes, in that sense, we do want STI to go back to normal. But on the other hand, STI before the pandemic was not a perfect place by any means. I know there was a lot that I had experienced as a freshman and a sophomore that I wish was different. And I think some of those things have been exacerbated this year, but they're not completely new. Things like our lack of mental health support, our lack of a relationship between students and teachers. These are not new concepts or new ideas. These are things that have always existed, but have kind of been highlighted because we're all apart and we're all virtual. And so as upperclassmen, we also have a responsibility to make sure that we are changing the culture that underclassmen are going to experience next year. We have 2 years of completely new grades that have never experienced what old STI culture was. And so if we want to change something, then like this is our opportunity, and not an opportunity that many other years or grades are going to have to change what normal is at STI. And so we'll continue our mental health advocacy. We'll continue to make sure that community building is as important as academics are. And we're going to make sure that there are outlets for students and administrators to connect on a regular basis. Part of that is going to be homeroom. We've never really had a frequent place or time to meet with our homerooms, and so that's going to be solidified. And we'll talk more about that later. But homeroom is one option. Community building days. We had a community building day for the first time this year, and it was really successful. We gave students the opportunity to catch up on sleep or their late homework, but for students who felt like they needed more socialization, they could have used that day to host a series of games, PSAL, club meetings, that sort of thing. And I think a lot of other schools have these days instilled within their school schedule on a yearly basis, and that's never been something STI has done. I also do a lot of work with schools outside of the student union. So I've been able to see how other schools have addressed the pandemic, and it's a lot different than what STI has done. I know schools that have made advisory a class every single day, or have made homework based on like completion, or not even counting homework as an official grade, to deal with the stress that students are facing. And so, yeah, that was a long answer, but there's definitely a lot we can do to change the culture at STI. So we want to go back to what the old normal was, but we also have the opportunity to change a lot. And I think we need to take advantage of that.
Wow, okay, that was a great response, Shivali. It's hard to follow up based on how much you just said about the importance of mental health and what we want to do next year. But I really want to echo what you said, and we're in these really liminal moments where we're not in the school building, and then some people are starting to come back, and now we're all going to be back next year. And I think that creates a lot of outlets for change specifically. And one thing that what we can all admit is that change is difficult for a lot of people, especially when you don't have resources to support you. But I think what Shivali was basically saying is we want to reform this culture and provide resources as a student union, and also encourage the administration to provide similar resources. So specifically what the Senior Caucus hopes to do, we want to continue with our wellness and yoga events. So we're having a second yoga event this Friday, actually. And we held one 2 weeks ago with a certified instructor from another school. And this week we're hosting one with Miss Guthrie, so a counselor. And then also, like Shivali said, community building is super important. And we want to really rethink push-ins and homerooms and work with the big SIB program, specifically to help freshmen and sophomores who have never been in the building, because we think our role as seniors is also to help younger generations and younger caucuses get the resources that they need to pass them on to their students and their constituents. Also, we're working on a mental health manual with other specialized high schools and Nest, and hopefully we can distribute that. It focuses on a lot of different disorders that people might not know about, and hopes to break down the stigmas of a lot of mental health difficulties that a lot of us have been facing during this pandemic, and I imagine will continue to face as we return. Cynthia, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to move on to more of the transitioning period from virtual school to in person. We've seen that a lot of people are using digital devices like iPads and laptops, and this has proven very effective. So we can't expect students to go back to in-person school and only use paper and pencil. They've been on their laptops for like more than a year. So we're going to be pushing for admin to allow us to use more devices in school. Previously, it was more up to the discretion of the teachers to see if they're allowing technology in their classes, but we feel that it's very important for us to transition back into class and be able to use all of these resources. And further on, not only is it effective for schoolwork, it also helps save a lot of resources like pens and paper. So there's that added benefit as well. We'll also push for more leniency with the cell phone policy rules. So previously, there's only a couple of areas in the school where you're able to use your cell phone. But as we've been using tech for the whole year, again, it's really important that we're using this technology to be able to allow students to feel that transition back and not make it too abrupt. Another thing is asking teachers to be more lenient with deadlines, because it'll be difficult for a lot of students who have been unmotivated, or perhaps they've been acclimated to using technology. So it'll take a bit of time for them to go back to this like structure and all of these deadlines. So we're going to ask for teachers to be a little bit more lenient and patient with students so that they don't feel too much pressure going back to school. And lastly, like Shivali and Ryan said, we want to help the SLT and the administration in any capacity we can with a plan to return. So we're going to take the advice and the wants of students. We're also going to collaborate a lot with Principal Yu this summer to talk about how we can make this transition back into in-person school a little more seamless. And yeah, that's going to be our priority, just making everything smooth back to school.
Hi everyone. Yeah. Okay. I think firstly, I really want to echo what the SEO and the senior caucus has already said. It's important that we keep this an ongoing conversation at Stuyvesant, and it's also important that over the summer we have a really great opportunity and window where we can actually be able to push through changes and work with the administration. And I hope that we'll be able to get somewhere with that. And I know for a fact that Andrey and I will be doing our absolute best to support the student union in their efforts in surveying students and getting the word out about that, so that we'll actually able to prove to the administration and ask them for certain things as well. And I think specifically what Andrey and I want to work on for next year is really just putting ourselves out there to the students and making sure that we hear and listen to all of them. And specifically, we want to hold triple H's, or basically, which are also called happy half hours. And it's almost like a sort of an office hours, but for the caucus. And it's not as boring as office hours. So office hours is a very negative stigma around it. But basically, we'll hold in-person or Zoom meetings once a week where anyone can come. They can just ask us questions. They can voice their concerns about, maybe a teacher or something that they feel as though it's not right that's going on in the school. And we'll be able to address those claims. And more than that, I think that'll really just help us to be able to connect with the student body again. And, just give students a safe space where they can talk about things that they need to talk about. And I think another important thing when we go back to school is I feel as though a lot of rising juniors right now are just itching to go back to school so they can see their friends again and just meet the people that they weren't really able to see for the past year. And a really big part of that is just making sure that we give students the opportunity to do that through holding really nice, big events and things like that. And I think, Andrey, would you like to add on?
Yeah, so much to what Daniel has said, we do indeed want to hold events which will actually allow for students to reunite, just as part of our like overall goal of alleviating stress and uniting the junior spirit. So I believe that we will try to, much like the senior caucus now has said, we're going to be talking to Principal Yu regarding events and safety concerns, and we're going to try to perhaps host a return to school picnic within the junior year, just to kind of reunite the juniors and ensure that we are actually, well, not a dysfunctional not a grade that is bad, that is not going to have a wonderful communication this year. Additionally, Daniel, I believe that we were also discussing with Daniel the opportunity of perhaps pushing for the So You Want To newsletters. So we're going to be trying to push out more uh, college readiness to the juniors through our newsletters, much like the Junior Caucus did this year. We're going to try to push out the So You Want To Major In, which is going to prepare juniors for college majors and actually see what they want to do. And we're also planning on perhaps having So You Want To newsletters on different topics, such as perhaps study classes or basically any kind of topic. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Given that all of you are returning members of student union and caucuses, like what do you think that the student union or student government could have done better this year, and how do you aim to improve this upcoming year?
So I think just in like the SU as a whole, there's a sort of a disparity between the connection with the SU and students, and without student support and just the awareness and lack of apathy within a student, the S student union is futile, and we want to use a bunch of different methods such as town halls, social media, and a lot of just less formal platforms to expand that connection we that we have, and yeah.
Hi everyone. Okay, so specifically from the junior caucus for the next year, I think a really big thing that we want to focus on is being proactive instead of reactive. I feel as though this was my first year in office, and I think we've had some stumbling blocks along the way, but I think I've learned a lot, and I'm going to hope that for the next year, we're going to be a lot more prepared for certain things. And over the summer, we also hope to like make some more plans concrete and plan out the rest of the year as well. And I think specifically, this also means that we want to connect with the students a lot more and make sure that we understand what their needs are. And we have a really unique opportunity when we go back to school to utilize really the word of mouth that we've lost over the pandemic. And we hope to utilize that. And we also want to increase social media activity in like specific ways. We're considering making newer things like a Snapchat and a TikTok, but again, we're just considering these things for now. And yeah, we hope that we're able to connect with the students through that. And I also want to say, yeah, I think another important thing that we really want to do is work more with clubs than we had before. And that can include things like promoting certain club events that we feel are really beneficial to the student body, as well as having more partnerships with certain clubs like Key Club and maybe holding events with them as well. And yeah.
Andrey, I don't know if you have anything to add on to that, but if not, I can move on to senior caucus. So downsides this year, we felt that we can only reach about half of the grade through our emails for events because there's a lot coming in every day. On top of that, a lot of the juniors in our grade are getting like spams of colleges just emailing them. So to improve this, we're going to try to work with teachers to reach the students that didn't really interact with our events and resources as much as we had hoped. So for example, asking teachers to post on their Google Classroom or announce it in class, since it's coming to someone more personal to them or someone that they see every single day. We'll hope that it's like a very easier way to access our resources. Furthermore, to expand on this, we'll return to advertising in homerooms, which was really great in person when you can just go around in rooms, having people go in there and get some more attention towards our events. Also using posters, extra credit opportunities from teachers. So reaching out early on to see if we can offer extra credit for some of our events and using social media. So Elio is going to talk more about how we're going to expand our social media to get more of a presence.
Yeah, so something Cynthia and I have done every single year of caucus is we usually sit down in the summer and we rethink our structure. So we rethink what went right and what went wrong in the year prior. And I think this year we did see a few things, and we are ready to adapt for next year. So one, like Cynthia just mentioned, we want to expand our social media presence, and that also helps tap into the students that we have a harder time reaching. And adding on to the idea, we'll change it by having a designated social media director, that'll make sure that all Facebook posts get posted in a timely fashion. Will help write emails for us, because email writing is a super important part of the job, and will also help manage our Instagram. Also, one thing that we do notice is that we might need a stronger events team next year, because we have a lot of events planned, and we need people that have visions for events and that know how to get things done. So we do anticipate changing our cabinet structure a little bit to accommodate more events members. In addition, we also might want to accommodate more resource members and researchers that can help research scholarship information and reach out to different college advisors, so that we can be prepared on that front as well. Yeah.
Okay, next is a question specifically for the student union. You mentioned restructuring homerooms in your plan. What would a newly structured homeroom look like?
Yeah, I think one downside of this year was that we were not able to have a solidified time in our schedule, even if we're monthly or weekly, to meet with our homeroom. I know for a lot of, I mean, everyone but freshmen, we haven't seen our homeroom classmates in a year and a half. And even with the freshmen, I'm a big sib, so I know that a lot of the times the attendance at homeroom meetings were really low, and I don't think that was necessarily a product of students not needing homeroom, but more so that we can't expect students to take time out of their after school day, especially on a Friday, to go back on their computer, log into a Zoom, and meet with these people that they like have never met before. That can be a very intimidating process, and the combined effort of like not having high attendance to not like really knowing who you're with, it just made the attendance very low this year. And so I think one way we want to combat that, especially knowing that next year we're going to have basically 2 incoming classes of freshmen, is by making sure that homeroom is during the school day, and that it's more frequent than it was even before the pandemic. I mean, I know that like you couldn't really predict when your homeroom would be. It would just be kind of randomly every few weeks, for like 15 minutes. And you never really could get anything done beyond like passing out report cards, or like quickly taking attendance with your teacher. And so I think that's a problem because in a lot of other schools, homeroom is treated as like an advisory, as a place where you can go at the end of the day or every day, to like check in with your friends, with your teachers, like reflect on your day or take out time kind of like as an advisory course. And so I think not only do we need homeroom to be more regular in a school day, but we need to like redefine what a homeroom class does and what it means. And so especially for the underclassmen, whether that means having guidance push-ins throughout the day, increasing the time from 15 minutes to maybe 30 or 40 minutes so that actual progress can be made within that period. I think those are all efforts that we need to take, as it'll address the academic stress and workload that underclassmen will be facing next year, as well as the mental health overload that every STI freshman experiences on their first year at STI. And so while there will be scheduling issues, and I'm sure we'll get pushed back on like spending time at homeroom, I think that sacrifice is something that is like worth taking. And I also recognize that for a lot of upperclassmen, it may feel like, you know, at this point we have friends, we know what we're doing with our time. So a homeroom might not be the best use of what we do with our 30 or 40 minutes. And so I think a way to combat that would be allowing upperclassmen to spend that time with less of a structure than underclassmen would. So allowing them to kind of roam around with their friends, talk to other people in other homerooms, maybe check in with their teachers, almost treat it like an office hours, or just get work done, because I know throughout the day, like any sort of free period you can get would be really useful. And so I think just adjusting homeroom to what each grade would need or what they're looking for is very important. And so we're going to work really strongly with the SLT and the administration to make sure that that is a priority within like community building and changing culture at STI.
Okay, and this is another question directed to the student union. To make sure policies are being followed, you mentioned that you will create pathways for students to advocate for themselves. Can you elaborate on these pathways?
So I think one of the main pathways that we want to focus on towards students is just raising the awareness of certain policies, such as the testing policy or the homework policy, and just a bunch of best practices for different constituencies within STI to follow. And if they violate them, students can easily report them or take their own action. And that's something that we want to see a lot more of, and just provide an emphasis on the relevance of the policies and make sure that they're followed. And in terms of the action steps on the SU side, we have a couple ideas in mind, such as working with the APs, revisioning the spiral, which with this year and previous years, it hasn't been as effective as it was hoped when it was made. And we'll be continuing to adapt and advocate for policies through SLT and doing check-ins and whatnot on to see whether or not these policies are followed, and being able to have students to actually use them to their advantage as they were intended to.
Yeah, and just to add on, not only do we want to make sure that students are aware of policies, but we want students to be able to advocate for themselves, and as that's like a very important, like just general life skills that we hope students are able to take away from their high school experience. And so we also recognize, though, that with the spiral of communication, when we did our mental health survey, we realized that a lot of students didn't report policies because they felt uncomfortable directly communicating with their teacher, as they felt there'd be some sort of like repercussion on their grade or just like the relationship and the way their teacher saw them. And that's a big problem. We recognize that student-teacher relationships need to improve because that's directly related to policies. And so one way we're going to advocate for students to have these direct pathways is continuing our conversations with administration, which we started last year or this year with Principal Yu, but also expanding it to other administrators and centering around different policies that like just builds relationship and makes students feel more comfortable talking to like teachers, administrators, but also like have this platform to discuss what they want to change.
And again, hi, just adding on, we also want to help advertise and promote these. I know with SU this year released sort of a document on what to do if teachers had violated, say, the homework policy, and that has helped a lot with different students contacting their teachers and knowing exactly what they need to do. And that's something that we want to continue with the upcoming school year, just so that students will be able to have a platform to support themselves and resources available.
Okay, this is another question directed for the SU. How do you plan on welcoming new students into the school and helping them adapt to the new environment, given the uncertainty of the next school year?
Yeah, so I think everything we've talked about really between the SU and caucuses kind of addresses this. As we've all mentioned, one of our biggest priorities is transitioning back to school because we know that this year hasn't been easy, but next year, unless we make change, it's not going to be any easier. And so one thing we're advocating for is that we don't really just jump right into the next year. Something that we kind of was ineffective this past year was that as soon as the first day of school started, we went right into the curriculum. You know, there was not really a chance for freshmen to get to know their peers, their classmates. And so we're going to advocate, especially for the underclassmen, to have an opportunity for teachers to just get to know their teachers, just get to know the people that are around them. And so that'll be a transition period where, you know, homework and testing is going to be a little bit lighter as they just get acclimated to what a STI like curriculum and workload is like. Another thing we want to advocate for is transitioning in terms of like hearing back from you guys, like we need to change events you guys want to experience. Obviously clubs play a really big role, like I said earlier, saying like all these traditions help students adapt to the STI environment because it makes STI more than just a place where you go to class and do your homework. And so as YSU, we're going to be uplifting a lot of clubs and opportunities for club leaders to meet with each other, host meetings in person, and allow these underclassmen to get to know their peers directly as opposed to through Zoom.
And we also want to make it clear that as we continue to advocate and make changes, we're going to be hearing a lot from different students through surveys and town halls and whatnot, just so that we're making sure that what we're doing is is right and what serves the interests of the student body.
Okay, and this question is for our senior caucus. How do you plan on easing seniors into the upcoming fall semester, balancing both the return to school and college applications?
Sure. So social interaction is very important to our caucus, especially as many parents and counselors have spoken to us about how important it is for students to speak. In a virtual environment, we haven't had much of that opportunity to do so, but as soon as we come back in the fall, we're hoping to start with a homecoming event that Elio kind of touched upon before. But essentially, there's two options that we have. The first is taking the boat that would usually be used for junior caucus this year, but obviously we can't go through with that because of COVID restrictions. So this year we've opted to go with a summer kickoff, which is set to go next month. It's going to be really great. And there's 3 parts to it, including a group event and a main event and a Minecraft themed interaction with all of the students, which will allow for more live interaction. But then for next year, we'll get to try to bring that boat over that usually is the hallmark of the junior prom, and hopefully use that for homecoming. So that would be like a main thing in the fall, taking all the seniors going on that boat, having a great time going around the water. And the second option would be going to the park near Styes, that's Battery Park. And we're thinking of setting up a red carpet, having a nice balloon structure at the end of it, taking pictures with all of seniors, and setting up a picnic event after, and just watching the sunset, having a lot of food, refreshments. And I think both would be a really great option, but it depends on the circumstances. And also we spoke to the SU about this and how do we feel about using the boat when it would be typically used for junior prom. So it's still all in the works, but we're definitely going to push for an in-person event. It's really critical that we get this social interaction as soon as we go back into the building. And Elio will talk more about events inside the SU, inside the community.
Yeah. So first, to just focus on like the question and specifically how we're going to balance school and also college applications. Again, Cynthia earlier talked about our timeline that we have. So we have a lot of events planned for late spring and summer. Working with professional college advisors, working with the Writing Center, and in the fall, we want to do other events like creating a bulletin on our website. But specifically, we want to use our website to host a lot of resources that we think would be helpful to students. So we want to have a lot of digestible scholarship information on our website, which we already have. But we fear that students don't use it because it's hard to process all the information. So in every weekly email, we usually send an email once a week. We'd like to send out specific scholarship information for students so that they can also apply to those and be ready for college financially. And also to expand on college, we want to continue to work with the administration to allow teachers to consider college applications when they're assigning work in the fall semester, and to deal with added stress. And also, we want to work with the admin to be more understanding of rules that a lot of us have probably forgotten. Yeah.
Yep. And another question to senior caucus is, this year everyone was very disconnected from each other. So how do you plan to bring the senior class back together to celebrate their last year?
Yeah, so like Cynthia mentioned before, we want to have the homecoming event right away as soon as possible, to get back to in-person socialization. And also, we want to use shared spaces like the senior atrium as community spaces during free periods. So we want to repaint the senior bar, and we want to make that space our own, and reconnect with people to make the building feel at home for all of us again. And we also want to have a photo booth that we can just take out of the SU room and bring to the senior atrium and do periodically throughout the year, for like different occasions, like one for homecoming, one for the last day of first semester, and just like create photo books and email the photos to students, maybe working with the Spectator, the Indicator for that. We also want to potentially have study rooms and active like essay help sessions in spaces like the senior atrium or potentially the Writing Center. And yeah, that's our vision for how we're going to bring back the community. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so for our junior caucus, junior year is well known to be one of the most stressful years around. So how do you plan to help juniors prepare for important exams such as the SAT and ACT while also handling the new workload imposed by being back in school?
Well, as we said before, one of my main goals is to actually alleviate stress. So we're gonna pretty much just hold SAT and ACT practice sessions so as to catch up on all the missed opportunities we missed because of the pandemic. And we're also going to host workshops that will be recorded and create newsletters regarding the college process and just the various tests that we're going to be taking in junior year because, well, people love newsletters. And we're also going to go ahead and improve our website that we actually created this year. And we're going to actually add new sections to it, which will um, going to hold our newsletters and going to hold videos of our workshops and also going to pretty much allow us to actually improve upon the um, improve upon the sorry which will allow us to actually help the student body by providing them with more information. And lastly, we're gonna actually promote student created works more. So for example, we're gonna promote study guides more. We're gonna ask them far more extensively. We know a few people in our grade who are actually really good at creating study guides. So we're gonna collaborate with them, try to ensure that everybody has access to the most utmost high quality content they can.
Yeah, and just to add on, it's not even just student created resources, but literally any resources the juniors might find useful, which actually we're going to start doing specifically today with the release of our AP studying guide, which is going to go out soon, hopefully, after this. And it's things like that, making sure that juniors have access to the resources they need. And I think a lot of the stress that comes with college and thinking about college is just the fact that not a lot of people know about what the things that they have to do and about how the college process actually goes. And we want to make sure that juniors are informed about that so that we're able to remove that burden from them. Yeah.
Yep, and this is another question directed to the junior caucus, sorry. Given the major workload that comes with junior year, how do you plan to keep students engaged with school/grade-wide events/activities?
Yeah, that's a really important question because I feel as though like the higher you get up in STI, the harder it is to be like more involved in certain things like going to school events and things like that. And so I think the most important thing with like keeping people engaged in school and grade wide activities is actually making sure that the grade wide activities are decent and things that people actually want to go to. And so I can't stress this enough, but really the most important thing about holding an actual event is to make sure that you're not doing it just to hold an event, but so that you can actually have people come enjoy it and have people interact. And so the main point that we want to really focus on with our events for the next year is quality over quantity. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to hold events frequently throughout the year, but it just means we want to make sure that our events are actually decent. And I think more than that, an important thing that we really want to do is more engagement with the student body. And I think I said this before, but Snapchat and TikTok are real possibilities. We might get people to work on those specifically for the junior caucus. Hopefully that turns out well. We'll see. And things like that. And I think specifically the freshman caucus this year did rather well in keeping their Instagram really active. We want to see more of that for the junior caucus next year.
Okay, so those are actually all of the questions that we have. I think if anyone has any lingering audience questions, you can feel free to put them into the chat and we can try and get to them. So give you like a minute or two to write those in if you have any. Okay, so we have a question here. I'll just go and ask it since I'm talking already. So Amir asks, with the expanded access of cell phones being negotiated, will there be a possibility of changing the one device per student policy for internet? So if anyone wants to take that.
Yeah, I can take it. Well, I think like many other things, before we come to a conclusion on this and before we decide and before the administration even allows this to happen, we need to consider what we have available. So I know this summer or this late fall before blended learning started, a lot of people went into the school and tested the Wi-Fi and tested Wi-Fi access. Because 3,000 kids going into the building every day is a lot. 3,000 people using the internet for their devices will be difficult. But again, the school was able to adapt for it this year for blended learners. And albeit the internet connection at STI isn't the greatest in the world, but it's enough to take notes. And I think this is something that we're going to have to wait and see for the administration to answer on access and see if it's even feasible. But I think, like Cynthia was saying earlier, with expanding access to cell phones and other devices, there are a lot of devices that don't require internet as well, like just ebooks where you can just take notes on electronic pages. So I think there definitely would be a possibility of changing the one device per student for the internet, but I don't know if that would even be feasible based on the access. So this is something we're going to have to wait and see from the administration.
Okay, thank you for your question, Amir. If anyone else has any questions that they'd like to ask, I'll give you guys like just another minute to write them down.
Well, it looks like there's no more audience questions, so we're just gonna end the town hall here. I just want to say, from everyone, from me and Ava and Nikki and Melody, thank you to everyone for coming, and thank you for audience members who came. Thank you to all our great representatives for speaking and talking about their policies. And I guess one reminder that we have is if there's any freshmen in this meeting right now, remember to vote for sophomore caucus elections on Friday, May 28th on vote.stisu.org. If that's it, then thank you everyone for coming. And Ava, if you have any remaining comments.
Yeah, so thank you to Melody and Nikki for moderating this debate, or not debate, town hall, asking all the questions and helping creating these questions. As Raymond said, thank you for everyone who came. If you want to rewatch any parts of this town hall, we're going to be posting a recording of this on YouTube, probably within an hour or so. So we highly suggest you check that out. And I think that is about it for us. We really look forward to seeing what all of these student government elected officials will be doing in this upcoming year, and seeing where they take us in our school as we go back into school finally, which we're all really excited about. Yeah, so thank you to everyone for coming, and we wish our new student government good luck in this upcoming school year. Yeah, thank you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you guys for coming.